All right, y'all, we back at it. Now we moving on to Damien Cash. This is Wrong to Strong talking to Damien Cash. Damien Cash was another guy that was very close to KATO, a guy that knew the Flores twins, had a very close relationship with VAL, was involved in the music business and the cartel business. Did a number of years for his involvement, and now he's home and working and doing what he got to do. In the time that I spoke about that KATO had De Niro Records, his partner was Damien Cash. Important figures to the future of Latino MCs in Chicago at that time. And we saw it come and go not once but twice. After De Niro Records, Damien Cash had Connected Records, and at the same time, Val had her label called Plug. This interview here is basically Wrong to Strong and Damien Cash catching up after a long time. If you have yet to subscribe to the channel, please do so. It's a fair exchange, free content. All you gotta do is push the button.
Damien Cash, welcome to Wrong to Strong. Money was big, big, big. You know, 40 grand, 50 grand was just like a slow day, a slow day in the Windy City that night. At one point, I know everybody in Chicago thought you were a king at one point.
And is when people they're like, "Oh man, you know the Wrong to Strong, dude." I'm like,
there you go. Got a picture of Damien Cash with the twins in their younger years on their way up the ladder, on their way to the summit.
yeah, man, that's like my brother, man.
There you go. Got a good picture of Jay and Val back in the day.
I know that I have to call him, and then I was like, but I owe this motherfucker money. Like, I'm not gonna want to hear shit. Yo, I know you just got out, but you got my money.
Imagine that. You go to jail, the game's just on pause. It's waiting for you when the doors open. There's still gonna be dudes that you're gonna run into in the supermarket that you owe some bread to.
How can I even call him? There's no way that I could call him with that in between us. And how are we gonna fix this, or how are we gonna um I'm not gonna go back into that world. There's no way I'm gonna be able to pay that to him. And all of those things came to mind.
It's like anything else, man. It's like gambling. Sometimes dudes are gambling just to dig themselves out of a hole. Think about how many dudes get out of prison, and because they owe money, they get back in the game, they go back to prison. Maybe paying that money, maybe not paying that money. It happens every day.
I just call him and maybe he'll just put me back on, and I would be right back to what the fuck we were doing before.
You weren't lucky, Damon. You were a good dude, bro, and you always took care of your friends, bro. You always looked out for your friends, man. And
Brother,
you
thank
know,
you.
that's a quality that you've always had. Uh, as far as I can remember, you you would call. I remember one time you called. We were at the house, and you were stopping to get something to eat. You called to see if Kay or anybody wanted something, but
Yeah,
that's just how you were. You know what
yeah.
I mean? So it's not luck, brother. It's that you carried yourself with respect and you treated everybody else the same way. So every
That type of stuff goes a long way. The way you treat people, the way you look out for people, you'd hope it's reciprocated if you were in a position that you couldn't control, and hopefully that kind of good karma comes back to you.
everybody, you know, is going to receive you the right brothers are going to receive you the same way. You know, just like I'm happy that you're back in my life. You know, I'm happy that you actually got to see the change in me, and that you're going to see everything that we're going to do together now, man. Because something's in store for us that we still don't know, but it's in store for us. But we made it. We're here for a purpose. We're on our way. We're driving right now. You know, we're just cruising. That's what it is.
Are the true definition of our man's Cato's most favorite two words or three words. He wanted to start an entertainment company or a writing company or a publishing company, and it was going to be called Incarcerated Scarfaces. We are the true epitome, and that we may not have scars on our faces, or you do, but under the skin and under in our hearts and in our souls, we've been incarcerated, so we've got these deep wounds and these deep scars, and we are that. We've gone through the fire, through whatever they want to call it, the mud, the slum, whatever. I didn't really have that long of a stint as you have, and the ins and outs of you. I dealt with my brother going in and out of prison, so I kind of knew a little bit what to expect from the outside looking in, but never did I think that that place was what it was, you know. And you could call what I went through a cakewalk, you know, because I went from a camp to a low, and you know, don't shit really kick off, you know, till the mediums and you know the maxes and all of that shit, you know. So for me, I feel blessed, you know. At even at sentencing, I feel like he was trying to show me and let me know that you're in my hands. I'm in control of this shit because I had signed off on 84 months. They went off and shaved another 24 months right at the sentencing because the guy who delivered shit to me got sentenced the day before for 60, and my lawyer just happened to open his mouth and say, "Hey, why did he get 60 and he's getting 84?" You know, and
Mm-hmm.
he's like, "Well, sign another agreement if the prosecutor doesn't have a problem with it. You know, I'm cool with 60 instead of 84." So just like that in the snap, you know how they play with that gavel
Oh
in
yeah.
court. They just, you know, your life is fucking swaying in the balance. You know, like okay, not 84, 60, just
There's courtrooms in America, thousands of them. Courtrooms in America where every day a man or woman sits on that bench and throws away people that could have had a good future and throws them away for years that'll destroy the rest of their life. That's just a fact. People think that everybody that stands in front of that judge deserves what they get. People think those judges are better than anybody standing in front of those judges. Some of those judges are worse criminals than those people in front of them could ever be. They went to school and they did the job, and now they get to literally judge and decide if you get an extra 20 months or you get less 20 months, you get extra 20 years or you get life. It's all on them. Depends on how they felt that day. That's the real truth. That's really what it is out there.
you know, 24 months, 2 years. That's not shit. We're just saying, talking, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And, you know, and even then, I believe God knew that COVID would be in the future and COVID would be the reason that I would get out another 18 months shaved off of that.
Valerie actually was the only one to this day out of all my bids has been the only one that's always that sent me money when I did time. You know, she would send me $1,000 every month. I was a straight baller for like year, a straight year until she found out that I was getting high in Mexico and she stopped it, you know, because she always looked at me like a little brother, you know what I mean? She always took care of me.
Another testimonial on his relationship with Val, how tight they were. Kept him right for a year while he was in the joint. Didn't condone his drug abuse either.
My favorite holiday is Thanksgiving, but I think it was always a time that we kind of enjoyed together because it was really close to his birthday, and Thanksgiving was this big feast of foods and all type of festivities that we would uh, get involved in, and just going shopping around the Black Friday days and getting deals and getting everything for the kids. And you know, those are the sides of him that I got to see that a lot of people didn't get to see. um, I was very much interwoven into the family dynamic of him. You know, his mom knew me well, his dad knew me well, his wife knew me well. I'd pick her up, I'd pick their kids up. And There was a family dynamic, and I was part of that for a long time. So, you know, today is a heavy day for me because he's on my mind, heavy today. And you know, I just want to tell a little story about him. When you're in the life, you know, you think it's the best way for you or your best way to just get to where you're going. For me and KATO, Dinero Records was our way out. It was our ticket, you know. Um, and it, you know, unfortunately, we were fueling it with, you know, illegal things and street things, and trying to get there by any means necessary, however we knew best. Um, and
Understand, man, it was, again, I'll reiterate, it was a big deal for us that De Niro Records win. it's kind of how a lot of Latino MCs in the game were looking at De Niro records like, yo, if this pop, we got an outlet. We got somewhere to go now. Somewhere that's backed by bread, powerful people. This could be it. This could be the one. Fell apart right in front of us. And it was separate of gang lines too. Like nobody was looking at it as a gang thing. We was looking at it as this is a record label thing. This is a music thing. This is an MC thing. This can happen for all of us. Same way you had the Bloods and Crips coexisting at death row as best as they could, was the same way what we had hoped for De Niro Records was that a place that anybody can go, and if we're gonna get it, we can get it, you know?
It just backfired, and even long after he died, I stayed, in that. And here we are 17 years later, and I'm still recuperating from it. But I will say that I agree with Julio, and had he have not died when he did, things would have went in a complete different trajectory, in a different way. We might have gotten a record deal, but the indictment that would have came down would have put a lot of us in jail for 20, 30 years, especially dealing with who we were dealing with at the time. And we probably would have been rolled all up into that shit when they shortly fled after KATO's death.
You heard what he said? When they shortly fled after KATO's death. So that's when Jay and Val got married, had their honeymoon in Mexico, and then Peter had to run and meet them in Mexico. That's what he's talking about. Had K not have died when he did, they would all go down in those indictments for 30 plus years.
Still very painful, but I do believe that he's above watching, sucking that meat out of his back tooth and just smiling or smirking at us, and happy that, we're still to this day keeping him alive, talking about him, talking about all the craziness we went through. And it's just one of those days, when you miss your friend, and
I get it.
You wish he was still around. I was done with mixtapes. They were after me for mixtapes, and I didn't have anything to do at that point, and I just dove into a life of crime, and he kind of helped navigate that for me, as it was all new to me. I did small little shit, but nothing on the scale that we were doing things on. So the first time I met the Flores brothers, prior to even meeting KATO, I was at Hoops downtown, a famous gym. R. Kelly frequently played there. Jordan, some of, out of town basketball stars used to go there. It was a pretty popular spot. A lot of celebrities there all the time. It's a couple $100 or $100 and some change an hour. You're getting it 4 or 5 hours at a time. I was making drug money off of mixtapes. I had a brand new Navigator, rims. I was iced out, latest of fashion, best kicks. You name it, I had it. I had a couple of vehicles out there working for me. I shipped to 13, 14 different states. And this is what led me to meet the Flores brothers. I was there, played a quick game and lost on R. Kelly's court, which was the first court. And next to them, adjacently, was the Twins. And they were playing with a bunch of characters from the neighborhood, from Little Village, a bunch of Latin Kings. Maybe there was a couple of guys that could play some basketball there. I get approached by them off the side. There was like these curtains that would divide the courts, and I was kind of on the side trying to see what they were doing over there. And they came over, and they see I'm the only Mexican there. They're like, well, what's going on with this guy? What's he doing over there with a court full of black dudes? Maybe he plays good, they started by inviting me to play one game real quick before I, was up next there. So I said, all right, cool, no problem. I don't want to get stiff and cold. So I play a game with them, and they're betting large amounts of money. There's cartel people there. I'm not even really knowing what's going on. I just kind of stepped into the shit and played a pickup game with them. And, they're betting thousands and thousands of dollars like it's a dice game or a horse race.
Opening the safe, showing everybody what they're working with. Even the dudes from the neighborhood that they felt like they could trust or whatever. You betting that kind of money, playing pickup games at hoops. You showing everybody what you're working with. Definitely showed Damien Cash what you was working with.
Just gambling. And I was like, wow, this is insane. There's nobody really here with like that level of talent. I don't think even where I was playing, they were that good on that court with our Kelly's all right. A couple of the guys there were semi-pro basketball players, but they still weren't at the level where they're betting money. So I found it odd that they were betting money, and I was, then that kind of opened my eyes. I said, oh, well, maybe, these guys are up to some shit and they just got money to burn. They got to be, maybe they're drug dealers or whatever. And, I knew of them, and I used to see them in the neighborhood, and I would maybe sell them a CD through their window. So they asked me to play. I play with them, and my game is up next door, so I go back over there and go back to playing there. I didn't think nothing of it. It was a brief meeting. I go outside and I do my regular thing. I pop my trunk open. I got my TV's sound blazing. I'm playing my latest mixtape, and all the guys from the court, the basketball court, come over and try to buy some CDs, buy here, 2-3 CDs here, make a quick couple $100 at the end of playing ball. And I'm sitting there, I'm still talking with Big John and a couple of the guys, and Blackie, who's a good friend of mine. And they take off, and the twins start coming out, and they're like, oh, what are you selling? I sell CDs. And they're like, they just straight approach me about work. They're like, man, you ain't getting all this off of CDs, man. What you need, bro? You around all these people, you could make some money. Woo up the bam. If you need something, we could get you. We could facilitate. And I'm like, nah, bro. This is what I do.
That's the pitch. That's how you approach everybody. Hope you had at least a little homework on buddy. You didn't do no homework on nobody?
This is what I do. I sell mixtapes. This is how I get my money. Quiet as kept. The RIAA had already set up an office in Chicago and was looking for me and a couple other people that were bootlegging Titanic movies, and
they were coming for them copyright laws, man. And with that comes tax evasion.
I was kind of on the radar to what most people, when I tell them my story about my mixtapes, label me as, oh, they were about to DJ drama you. They were hot on my heels. All the stores were all over me, telling me, hey, they're asking us questions about you, and can we put an order in with you to have you come here and deliver CDs? So this is like...
They were running undercover ops on them, trying to get people to flip on them for mixtapes.
My first real feelings like, whoa, I'm really doing something illegal here. And at the same time, I'm meeting these, street drug dealers, drug lords, cartel people. And I'm like, I might as well be selling drugs if these people they're trying to set me up and do a controlled buy with some CDs. My face is on my CDs at this time. I'm caught red-handed is what I'm thinking. So I just left the CD game all the way alone right then and there. I decided to quit. And this is when, it's kind of like the crossroads for me. The twins start off by buying a box of CDs off me, which I thought was weird. I only had like 4 or 5 different titles, and there's a couple hundred CDs in there. I sell them to them for $5 a whop, which is what I sell them to the stores for. I make a quick rack. I think nothing of it. Out comes KATO and VAL from the gym. I'm like, who's that? And I'm like, oh, that's KATO. I'm like, oh, I sold him some CDs before.
Wow. That's a revelation to me that Damien Cash met KATO and VAL through the twins and that basketball game. I didn't know that.
They're like, yeah, he's a Trumbull 2'5", and that's his girl. Don't look at her though, he'll get pissed off. He's very overprotective of her.
And she wanted everybody to look.
This point, one of the twins in the back gets to commenting about personal things with this woman. You know, I put all this shit together long after this all went down, and you know, my personal belief is that, you know, they had something going on. You know, he commented on the texture of her skin and how soft it was, and this, that, and the third, like he had been intimate with her.
And finally, something along the lines of what I felt, that Jay and Val had something to do with each other before KATO's passing. He definitely was infatuated with her. How strong is that kind of infatuation, and what are you willing to do for it?
He commented on the texture of her skin and how soft it was, and this, that, and the third, like he had been intimate with her. This is prior to me meeting KATO. And I didn't think nothing of it until long after, and everything happened with them. But my first job with them was to come on board, sit KATO down, let him cool off, and I would take care of his runs for him. Basically be a ghost for him. And you know, I needed to make good money. I was making really good money off of CDs, and that was being taken from me. So I decided to say, fuck it, let's do it. And at first I had no communications with KATO. I worked for the twins, and you know, everything was smooth, everything went well. I started making decent money, and I would hang out with them. We'd go eat places and hang out and talk and do all types of shit, you know, go paintballing, hoops, go eat at fancy dinners, meet people. And I started noticing things started to get heavy and thicker and deeper and, you know, more risque. And around the same time, I believe there was friction between KATO and the twins' relationship, and how much they were controlling what he was doing and his clients and who he had under him. And
this is the first information we're getting about any kind of conflict in between the two, between KATO and the Flores brothers. Like I always say, it's a perspective thing, man. Some people seen it one way, some people seen it the other. Some people didn't think about it hard enough to really see anything. We sift through the information and we make our own judgment on it.
They were controlling what he was doing and his clients and who he had under him, and he didn't like that. I mean, as no man really wants no other man kind of over their business. So he started to look for work elsewhere, and you know, he found a couple of other different connections and started to try to part ways with them. But at that point is where I had to make a decision. He didn't want to lose the fact that I was reliable and could make all his rounds for him effortlessly and seamlessly without a hitch, and nothing would become up missing, or, you know, I was very trustworthy. You know, I was wet behind the ears, I was green, and I was just learning this shit, and these people were teaching me this, and I, you know, the last thing on my mind was double crossing anybody and anybody that had that type of power. So I decided to part ways, and the twins were like, well, you could do whatever you want to do, you know, we could figure out something for you to do for us, or you could go with him. And it's like, no problem, Wody is like their number one word, you know, like, don't worry, but we still be cool, it's all good, you know, he's still our boy, and this, that, and the third, and we'll still hang out, you know, but he just wants to do his own shit his way, and, you know, just, you know, be careful. And I decided to continue to work for KATO directly, and then we became really tight, and he started to ask me about my music stuff, and he did a ride along with me. I decided to put out a couple of mixtapes again and try to like make a comeback, couple mixtapes, and he rode along with me and saw like...
This is the first time we hear of any type of division between the two. They didn't get into it too deep in the Surviving El Chapo podcast with the Flores twins, Val and Vivi, but This is the first we hear of any kind of split between the two camps.
I did and how I did it, and he fell in love with music, and he was like, well, how do we do this legit? And I was like, well, I'm kind of already trying to start a record label. I kind of got an artist already, you know. I don't know what I want to call it. I don't know what I want to do. And then, you know, just like any hustler, you know, we forget about the conversation and go on to flipping whatever it is we're flipping and doing whatever it is we're doing. I was like, man, I need to go ahead and incorporate something to do with this music thing. And that's where, if you look on my Instagram, you'll see the incorporation papers at the Secretary of State. I decided to incorporate the Narrow Records. And that was the start of it. And we started off modestly in a basement with Mike Snoddy, who's a Grammy-nominated producer as producer Diddy, and I had 3 or 4 rappers there, and we just went on a beat. I believe it was, I can't remember if it was the Ether beat or something of the sort, and we got on Bad Boy Radio. Shout out to Mike Love and the Diz. Just kind of sparked interest in KATO, and he was like, well, how did you do that? How did you get on there? And how did you make that happen? And I was like, look, dude, I'm starting to record with this artist. You need to show up to the studio. And he would blow me off. He blew me off 2-3 times. Matter of fact, the first time he came to the studio and met Prophet, he was like 2 hours late. And he had told me, man, go ahead, book the session. I promise I'll make it there. I'll go 50-50 with you. And I'm sitting there, you know, I'm not having a whole lot of money at the time. And he's just like 2 hours late. I'm like, bro, where were you? Oh, I was buying a Hayabusa. Sorry. No, he didn't even say sorry, which is what pissed me off even more. I'm like, bro, I take this shit serious, bro. Like, you told me you were coming and you were gonna.
It's a hard thing when you're in a creative business, in a music business, trying to get street dudes to get involved, trying to get everybody on the same page and understand that this don't run the way outside runs. This runs on a clock. Every dollar is money. You know what I'm saying? Out there, you can stretch a few here, cut a few there. In the music business, it's like you paying for these hours. You're there to use these hours. We're there to use this energy to create something that didn't exist an hour ago.
Pissed me off even more. I'm like, bro, I take this shit serious, bro. Like, you told me you were coming and you were gonna split this bill with me. I've already came to the studio 3-4 times and you've never showed up, and you want to do music. You keep telling me you want to do music. And he just looks at Val and he throws some money at me. And he's like, man, fuck this bullshit. I don't need to hear this shit. Let's go, Val. And he took off. And then somehow I end up over by Hot Boys Car Wash on the day that my freestyle with Bad Boy Radio, which is Mike Love and the Diz, was about to air that day. And I'm in the car with him and an old friend of ours who also was in the music business. So now I'm about to play this on radio, and the guy in the back's like, oh, you do music, I need your help, this, that, and the third. Shout out to Static, you know who's in the back seat. He's like, I've invested millions of dollars into this shit and I can't figure it out. I can't even get on radio. And I'm like, yeah, well, my rappers are about to come on radio right now. And mind you, it was a modest flex, you know. We were just being highlighted, but we had been highlighted for the last couple of weeks, and it just happened to be that I'm there. And KATO right away, he's like, yeah, we're doing this music shit, man. We're about to do this shit big, man. I've been thinking about this shit for a long time, this, that, and the third. He's like, yeah, check this out. Like, he immediately assumed ownership of the situation. And I was like, all right, I guess however I could get you on board to fuck with me, dog, I'm with it. Let's go. This is yours too. It's on the radio. Let's go. Let's do this. I was more concerned with who's gonna finance this shit, because I knew it required money, and more money than I had to give.
Same as with what he said about the twins. KATO wasn't in the business of wanting men telling him what to do. Same as when he walked in 2 hours late and got checked for it. He wasn't trying to hear that. But when you hear from the outside on the way in that so-and-so spent so much money and got nothing out of it, he's looking like, well, this guy figured it out. I'm with dude.
Who's going to finance this shit? Because I knew it required money and more money than I had to give at the time. So that's really, I think, where it clicked for him. He heard it. He saw me have a vision. We rode and talked about it when he went on a ride along with me selling my mixtapes, and we talked and how would we do it, and who would we get to feature, and how would we put the album together, and where are we going to record at. We had all these conversations, and nothing was solid. I knew nothing of how I was going to do it. I had none of it figured out. I just knew I wanted to do music.
We didn't know none of that. We knew that there was money behind it. We knew that all the other labels in Chicago had mad talent behind them, but didn't have no bread behind them. We knew they had money behind them.
And he wanted to do music as well. And that day when he heard it on the radio, it was like it materialized.
He saw the manifestation of a creative's idea come to fruition. That's magic to some people that can't figure out how to do it. You know what I'm saying? So he attached himself to it.
For him, and it materialized for me, and he realized, okay, this guy means what he says, and this is what he wants to do, and here he is with hardly any money. He's on the radio. Let's do this. And here we are, 17 years later, talking about what could have been. Not a lot of people know what was in that album, the hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s that was spent in that album, from Fat Joe to DMX doing the remix or slanging them things and willing to do other records with Prophet, from Fabulous's Wild Hundred song, from 3 Kanye tracks with 1 Kanye track with him on the hook. Who you name it, every producer who's a somebody right now, from Extreme to Bugs to No ID, all of these people were people that we were shopping tracks from and getting tracks from for the album.
Absolutely.
So what could have been something amazing, something great, but that's not what God's plan was, and here we are trying to pick the pieces up 17 years later, still to the date, talking about it, heard about it, and that was my first meeting of these guys, the twins and KATO, and it was a wild ride. It's still unbelievable. I sit here and I look at everything before me, the time that they've done, the time that I've done in prison. My case had nothing to do with their case, but I still ended up in the same situation. And in my last video, I say the same thing, what would have happened had he not died? What type of indictment was that going to be? All of us rolled into a sushi roll, red-handed, in the cookies in the pot, in the jar, Those times would have been astronomical that we would have gotten handed down. But I'm in the process of launching my own YouTube channel, people. It's going to be called Cash's Couch, and it's going to be more about music. My first guest on the show is going to be Prophet, and we're going to talk in detail.
I'm looking forward to see if he did that. I'm looking forward to see those interviews, and hopefully looking forward to talk to Damien Cash myself in the future about other things aside from just the cartel. Talk music, talk the landscape of Chicago hip-hop and where he's at now.
The concoction and the production of the album, and how De Niro came about, and how we all met, and how we created the project that I call it, that never was, that could have been.